What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Daily Rollup. My name is Kagan Dunlap, and Monday through Friday, we put together 5 to 7 short stories of things happening around the planet or here in the United States to compile them into a short, easily digestible format so you can kind of have a brief idea of things that are happening around the world in an easy to digest format. So without any further ado, let's get right into it. So this is probably one of the craziest things I've ever seen the Chinese military do. Apparently on August 11th of 2025, a collision occurred between a Chinese Coast Guard vessel identified as CCG-3104 and a People's Liberation Army Navy destroyer, hull number 164, which was a Type 052 Delta guided missile destroyer. And it happened near the contested Scarborough Shoal, which is just known for being a hotbed for activity between the Chinese Coast Guard and the Philippine Coast Guard constantly. There's always all kinds of like fighting going on between them, like the Chinese Coast Guard always spraying them with hoses and like all kinds of stuff. Anyway, the incident took place approximately 10.5 nautical miles east of the shoal during a tense confrontation involving Philippine vessels and Chinese Coast Guard vessels. Now, this area has been a huge disputed area that's part of the West Philippine Sea, where China claims vast territories that overlaps with Philippines' exclusive economic zone, despite the 2016 international arbitration ruling favoring Manila. Now, the collision between the two vessels was captured on video by a Philippine Coast Guard individual and was widely shared all over social media today. And it shows the Chinese Coast Guard vessel pursuing the Philippine patrol boat at a high speed before crashing into one of its own destroyers that cut it off as it was chasing them. So you can see it's like coming forward, and then the PLA Navy like crosses right in its path and it crashes into the Navy destroyer. Now, apparently there's been no casualties reported from the incident, but the Chinese Coast Guard ship sustained significant damage, rendering it like not seaworthy anymore. Now, like I said, the South China Sea is a hotbed for territorial disputes between China and specifically the Philippines, because they're constantly trying to like assert control over this roughly the entire region, including its quote 9-dash line, end quote, claim, which conflicts with the EEZ of several nations, including the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Scarborough Shoal, and all kinds of other stuff. Now, the Scarborough Shoal is a rich fishing point about 120 nautical miles west of Luzon and has been a massive flashpoint since China seized effective control in 2012 following a standoff with the Philippine forces. Now, the day that this took place, the Philippine Coast Guard was conducting a humanitarian operation called Kadiwa para sa Bagong Bayaning Mangingisda. Wow, that was a mouthful. But anyway, the bottom line is they were aiming at like providing fuel supplies and aid to around 35 Filipino fishing vessels in the area. Like the Philippine Coast Guard was trying to help local fishing vessels. The Philippine Coast Guard deployed ships including the BRP Teresa Magbanua, the BRP Suluan, and the MV Pamalakaya. Wow, I'm having a real hard time pronouncing these today. Sorry. Anyway, they sent out 3 different ships in order to support the fishermen amid the reports of Chinese harassment, because not only does the Chinese Coast Guard harass the Philippine Coast Guard, but they harass any local fishermen that are in the area, or fishing ships that are in the area from the Philippines. Now, Chinese vessels, including the Chinese Coast Guard and PLA Navy ships, were being accused of performing hazardous maneuvers and blocking tactics to prevent the Philippine mission. Earlier in the mission, the Chinese Coast Guard was firing water cannons at the Suluan, which the Philippine Coast Guard vessel evaded through skilled seamanship, but they continued pursuing them. Now, the big thing that's very unusual about this is the friendly fire blue-on-blue incident that took place when the Chinese, People's Liberation Army Navy ship, like I said, crossed paths with the Chinese Coast Guard vessel. I don't know if they did this by accident because they just weren't paying attention and they're being, they were so focused, hyper-focused on disrupting the Philippine Coast Guard's operations, or like if the People's Liberation Army Navy did it on purpose to interdict their own vessel. Because, maybe there's a possibility that the Navy vessel was like, hey, the Chinese Coast Guard ship is getting a little out of control. We need to essentially get them to stop. But either way, it definitely highlights coordination issues if it wasn't on purpose, because they obviously weren't talking to each other. They weren't on the same net and they weren't paying attention, because that caused significant damage to the Chinese Coast Guard vessel, rendering it not seaworthy. And it caused pretty good damage to the Navy vessel as well, which could have led to bigger problems. And obviously a big Navy vessel like a missile destroyer like that is probably very expensive. Anyway, I'm sure that the Chinese military and the Chinese Coast Guard are probably pretty embarrassed by this thing. And I don't know, maybe it'll dissuade them from doing it in the future. We'll see. Or maybe they'll just get their communication back on track and they'll start continuing. I guess we'll find out. So on August 10th, Reuters was reporting that there was going to be apparently National Guard troops deployed to the National Capital Region in Washington, D.C. as a response to the president's intent to, quote, clean up the city and reduce violence and crime and things like that. So in any case, President Donald Trump posted to his Truth Social this morning on August 11th at 8:11 a.m. saying, quote, Washington, D.C. will be liberated today. Crime, savagery, filth, and scum will disappear. I will make our capital great again. The days of ruthlessly killing or hurting innocent people are over. I quickly fixed the border, in parentheses, 0 illegals in the last 3 months. DC is next. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald Trump. And then in addition to that, on August 11th of 2025 as well, President Donald Trump announced a series of measures aimed at addressing what is described, or what he's describing as, quote, a public safety emergency, end quote, in Washington, D.C. These include declaring a formal public safety emergency, placing the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department under direct federal control, and deploying National Guard troops to the city. The actions have been framed as a response to crime, homelessness, and urban decay in the nation's capital, with the president invoking Section 740 of the District of Columbia's Home Rule Act to justify the federal takeover. Now, the president referred to this day as, quote, Liberation Day for DC, emphasizing efforts to, quote, take our capital back, end quote, from violent gangs, drug dealers, and other criminal elements.
This is Liberation Day in DC, and we're going to take our capital back. We're taking it back.
Now, these announcements are coming amid reports that violent crime in DC's actually decreased by roughly 30%, although I'm not sure where that data is being pulled from. I just know that there are local officials like the DC Mayor Muriel Bowser and other local officials that are saying that crime has actually reached a 30-year low, though I don't necessarily believe that myself personally, because I've seen a lot more crime happening over the past 20 years. But then again, I haven't seen any formal reports on this, so I don't know. I would encourage you to do research on that to see if you can find any data that shows a downtrend in crime. Now, the president was citing different incidents like the attempted carjacking of a former Doge staffer, amid other concerns and broader concerns about street crime and homelessness. Now, the declaration is going to be triggering a federal intervention, including emergency curfews in certain neighborhoods, changes to no cash bail policies, and the end of sanctuary city protections in the district. He also said, quote, this is a tragic emergency. I don't like being up here talking about how unsafe and how dirty and disgusting this once beautiful capital was, end quote. Now, the emergency is invoked under Section 740 of the DC Home Rule Act of 1973, which allows the president to assume direct control of the DC police during emergencies. Notifications were sent to DC Mayor Muriel Bowser and relevant congressional committees. Now, Attorney General Pam Bondi was appointed to take command of the Metropolitan Police Department effective immediately, while the DEA chief was named interim federal commissioner of the DC Police. Now, in addition to all of these actions, the administration is also surging 500 federal agents from agencies like the FBI, the ATF, Secret Service, U.S. Park Police, and DEA and U.S. Marshals, as well as DHS to target violent criminals. Now, some of the broader efforts that they're going to be maintaining during this thing is going to be evicting homeless encampments from federal lands and combating drug networks, as well as just trying to reduce overall violence in the city in general. Also, National Guard troops are coming to D.C. The president signed a presidential memorandum directing the Secretary of Defense to deploy the National Guard to D.C. to restore law and order and public safety, with about 800 troops expected to be mobilized to D.C., flowing into the streets over the next coming weeks. The troops will assist in logistical operations, allowing police to focus on arrests and enforcement. So they're not saying that the National Guard troops are going to be used for law enforcement capacity. They're just saying that they're going to be used in a logistical capacity, based on what I've read. Now, the U.S. military has been preparing for this activation since at least August 10th of 2025, with the troops expected to arrive imminently. The Secretary of Defense even confirmed the mobilization on August 11th during the press conference that they held in the morning of August 11th. Now, as far as support and opposition, supporters of this move are praising the efforts of the president and the White House to make D.C. safe again, with comments that are basically just, in support of it, saying, yeah, the city's not safe. It's dangerous. We need to make DC safe again. While people that are opposing this are saying that it's a, quote, propaganda stunt. Some people are saying that there's potential racial implications, although that's unsubstantiated. And then some people were accusing them of authoritarian overreach, although that you can decide for yourself what you think. At the end of the day, the two sides of the fence that I've been seeing on this is some people are saying, yes, the city is completely overrun with crime and homelessness and needs to get cleaned up. And the other side is stating that they think this is just complete overreaction and that it's not actually as bad as it is, or as it's being stated or framed to be. So outlets like the New York Times, Reuters, and the Washington Post have covered this event as if it were a crackdown, while the mayor of the city, Mayor Bowser, is saying that the stated conditions in the city's progress don't warrant federal takeover. So either way, I'll let you guys decide how you feel about it. All right, so with all the crazy news coming out of Washington, D.C., I'm not surprised we missed this massive news that's breaking right now. There was an explosion at the U.S. Steel Clairton Coke Works plant in Clairton, Pennsylvania on August 11th of 2025 that took place around 10:51 a.m. local time. The blast, which took place in the reversing room. The reversing room is basically part of the infrastructure that manages the airflow and combustion process in the coke oven battery, which coke ovens operate by heating coal in an oxygen-free environment, and this process requires precise control of air and gas flow in order to maintain high temperatures, typically 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit or higher. Now, the reversing room houses equipment such as dampers, valves, control mechanisms that periodically reverse the flow of gases through the oven's heating system in order to ensure an even heating and efficient combustion. So that's what a reversing room is for. Anyway, it took place in the reversing room that triggered a fire and led to a level 3 mass casualty incident declaration to mobilize additional emergency medical services resources from across the region. And the facility is North America's largest coke producing operation, supplying critical materials for steel making nationwide. Now, so far, what I've been able to find is that one person has been confirmed dead, and there are dozens of people who were injured, with reports of multiple or several victims transported to hospitals via helicopter and ambulances. Apparently, there were several individuals that were trapped under rubble following the explosion, which prompted ongoing rescue operations by firefighters and EMS teams. So far, there's no more additional fatalities that have been officially confirmed beyond the initial report, though the situation remains active because as I'm recording this video, it's only been like an hour, 2 hours, 2.5 hours. Now, the cause of the explosion still remains unknown as of 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, with investigations expected to follow once the scene has been secured and everybody's been rescued or confirmed deceased. Like I said, this is a developing situation, and I'll keep you guys updated if I hear anything else about it. So a popular Roblox YouTuber named Michael Schlepp has been kind of at the center of some controversy after being banned from the platform Roblox and receiving a cease and desist letter from them, specifically telling them to stop doing what he's been doing. Now, for those of you that don't know who Michael Schlepp is, what he does is he gained notoriety in around November of 2021, and he gained some fame through using his Roblox series, which is where he and his team posed as children to expose alleged child operating on the platform, because there's been a big problem with child using Roblox as a means to lure children into meeting up with them and stuff like that. So his efforts led to the arrest of at least 6 individuals accused of behavior so far. He's described his work as a mission to make Roblox safer, given its massive user base of over 111 million daily active players, many of whom are children. So the ban stemmed from Roblox's accusation that Schlepp's methods violated their terms of service and endangered users. Specifically, the cease and desist letter claimed that he engaged in, quote, simulated child endangerment, end quote, by initiating explicit conversations, shared or solicited personally identifiable information, and encouraged users to move discussions off the platform to other apps. Now, Roblox acknowledged his intent to protect children, but argued that his vigilante approach interfered with their official safety protocols and that he should have used the platform's reporting tools instead. And as a result, Schlepp was permanently banned from creating or using any Roblox accounts, which is a decision that he's publicly accepted in a video titled, quote, Roblox is threatening to sue me for protecting kids, end quote. Now, in that video, Schlepp basically vocalized that part of his motivation to do this was the fact that as a child, he was groomed on Roblox by a well-known developer. And that incident contributed to some serious trauma for him, that he was out there on a mission to try to prevent other people from having to experience themselves. Now, he reported that to Roblox at the time, but claims that the company dismissed it until years later when they finally banned the developer. Now, this revelation has fueled accusations that Roblox is still, more aggressive towards people that are trying to expose than towards the actual themselves. And so that's continued to stir some controversy. Now, there's been a lot of people that have supported Schlepp for his actions, including well-known creators like Asmon Gold, Charlie from Moist Critical, and other massive social media influencers. We'll see if they allow him back on the platform or not. It doesn't seem like they're going to fold, but I guess if enough people get on board, maybe they will. So apparently the U.S. Supreme Court is seriously considering a petition this fall that explicitly asks for them to overturn the Obergefell versus Hodges ruling that took place in 2015 that ultimately legalized same-sex marriage. Now, the way that they had legalized it was by requiring states to license and recognize such unions under the 14th Amendment's due process and equal protection clauses. The case in question stemmed from a long-running legal battle involving Kim Davis, which was a former county clerk in Rowan County, Kentucky, who in 2015 refused to issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples, citing her religious beliefs, which led to her brief imprisonment for contempt of court and subsequent civil lawsuits. Now, a jury later awarded damages to one affected couple of $100,000 for emotional harm and $260,000 in attorney fees, and Davis appealed, losing at the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit in March of 2025. Now, in July of 2025, Davis filed a petition for a writ of certiorari, which I don't know what that means, with the Supreme Court that argued not only her First Amendment free exercise of religion rights shield her from liability, but also that Obergefell was egregiously wrong and should be overruled entirely, drawing parallels to the court's 2022 decision in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, which overturned Roe v. Wade. Now, if she's granted certiorari, the case could be argued in the court's 2025-2026 term, which begins in October of 2025, though the petition notes that existing same-sex marriages would likely be grandfathered in. All right, that's it for the daily roll-up for today on 11 August of 2025. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please let us know what you thought about this in the comments below. If there's things that we did well, things that you think we can improve upon, or anything specific about the stories that you liked or disliked or want to see more of, or if you want to see some follow-up on. And we will see you in the next video.